All right, so again, we're starting in the book of Ruth, one of my favorite stories that I like. It's only 4 chapters long, but the book is just full of kindness, grace, love. On the front end, it's full of bitterness, tragedy, hopelessness, but when you put it all together and you walk through it, it's such a great picture of God's grace. And you'll notice that if you've read it already, God's not mentioned a whole lot in this book. He's kind of in the background and behind the scenes of everything, but you can see him moving. So, again, the book of Ruth, subtitle, A Kingdom in Sight. And part 1 we're going to be looking at is Orchestrating Redemption in the Darkness, because a lot of this is going to be in dark times. So to set this up, we're going to look at the intro, get a little bit of knowledge on that, and then we're going to move right into the story. We're going to try to paint the scene of what's really going on. So in the introduction here, that just some historical background and setting. The author and date, Jewish traditions credit Samuel as the author written between 1011 to 971 BC, the years of David's reign. Other than Bethlehem, Moab, the long-standing enemy, is the only other mentioned geographical national entity. So we're looking at this story. We're only going to look at Bethlehem and Moab. And so a little bit about Moab. Moab originated when Lot fathered a child through incest. You read that in Genesis 19:37. Centuries after Lot fathered Moab, the Israelites encountered opposition from Balak, king of Moab, through the prophet Balaam, and you can read that story in Numbers 22 through 25. The Moabites became one of Israelites' long-standing enemies. Ruth's story takes place when judges ruled Israel. This is from 1370 to 1041 BC, bridging the time from judges to Israel's monarchy. The time period of Ruth was likely during the judgeship of Jair, 1126 to 1105 BC, and we read that in Judges 10, 3 through 5. And we can see this working backwards in time from David's reign, 86 years before David's birth. David was birthed actually in 1040, so you just go back and you'll be right around that time, maybe give or take 20 years, but you'll be right in that time period when his grandfather would have been born. This is going to cover a period of 11 to 12 years. 10 of those years are in Moab. Several months are going to be in Boaz's field, 1 day in Bethlehem and 1 night on the threshing floor, and about 1 more year in Bethlehem. Some things to remember as we track through this. There's going to be some things that as we go through our lessons throughout the week, I'll have some slides kind of pop up, but these are things to remember just for this lesson. So we got to make sure that we read in light of Judges 2:16 through 19, and we'll take a peek of that. This reveals the unstable relationship created by the Israelites. Famines often represented God's judgment. We read that in Leviticus, in Deuteronomy, and in 1 Kings. Now, I'm not saying this is the theme here for that. It doesn't say because of God's judgments that we're going through a famine. We could just see a pattern of that happening. Every time there was a famine, God was trying to get the people's attention or punish the people. Deuteronomy 23, 3 through 6 expressly forbids Moabites from entering the assembly with the Jews to worship. They were trying to gain access. Moabites wouldn't let them pass. And if you want to check out that story again, 23, 3 through 6, and that was just a long-standing enemy from them. And they weren't allowed to enter the place of worship. It wasn't like the Canaanites were like, hey, don't mix and mingle with these folk because that's a sin. These people just weren't able to go into the place of worship, and they were kind of avoided. Israel was enslaved by Moabites for 18 years because they had done evil in the sight of the Lord and delivered through Ehud. This is in Judges 3, 12 through 14. This was about 50 years before this story took place. So I just want to get in our head how Moabites were the enemy. They stopped them, didn't really help them from getting into the land, didn't really help them at all. Not only that, but they were enslaved to the Moabites. And so this is a long-standing enemy that's going to be in this story. Not going to read through all these. These are the things to remember. So as we get into a portion of a law that we need to remember, I will pull up one of these. Well, the laws of the family saying that if you have no heir, not even a daughter, that the closest relative is going to take the inheritance. It could be the brother, it could be someone within the clan, but that inheritance had to go to someone in that part of the family. And we're going to touch on that a little bit. All right, some themes that we're going to see threaded throughout the book of Ruth. Ruth, the Moabitess, illustrates that God's redemptive plan extends beyond the Jews to the Gentiles. Ruth demonstrates that women are co-heirs with men of God's salvation grace. Ruth portrays the virtuous woman of Proverbs 31:10. Ruth describes God's sovereign and providential care of mundane, unimportant people in insignificant times, which later proved to be crucial in accomplishing God's will. Ruth, along with Tamar, Rahab, and Bathsheba, are grafted into the genealogy of the Messianic line. Boaz is a type of Christ that becomes Ruth's kinsman redeemer, and David's right, and thus Christ's right, to the throne of Israel is traced back to Judah. And so those are themes that we're going to see again running through the book of Ruth as we knock them down one by one. The characters that we're going to be looking at before we break into it is Elimelech. His name means my God is king. And back then, when you named your child, it meant something. There was something, that you were passing down or maybe what was represented there. So with Elimelech, obviously his parents were devout people of the covenant community, named their kid, my God is king. He marries Naomi, which means my delight. Then they have Mahalion, which his name is going to be meaning tired or pining. Kilion is pining. That's also going to be like weak or tired. Ruth means friendship. She's a Moabitess. Orpah means gazelle, hanging of one's head in submission, fear, or stubbornness. And she was also a Moabitess. And so now as we break into this, just to set the scene of what's going on. Again, we're in the book of Judges. This is in the time of Judges. Joshua had spent some 7 years before he died conquering the land of Canaan and then distributing the land to the 12 tribes. And so in the midst of this, their great triumph, this 40-year journey to finally get there, and then 7 years to finally get these people out of there and divide the land up, Joshua dies, and now the people just start to decline spiritually. There's no leader there. And when you read the book of Judges, this is what's going to come up. So I want to kind of prime our minds for what we're about to do. And this is the scenario that we're going to find this family in. So in Judges 2:16 through 19, it says, "Nevertheless, the Lord raised up judges who delivered them out of the hand of those who plundered them. Yet they would not listen to their judges, but they played the harlot with other gods and bowed down to them. They turned quickly from the way in which their father walked, and obeying the commandments of the Lord, they did not do so. And when the Lord raised up judges for them, the Lord was with the judge and delivered them out of the hand of the enemies all the days of the judge. For the Lord was moved to pity by their groaning because of those who oppressed them and harassed them. And it came to pass, when the judge was dead, that they reverted and behaved more corruptly than their fathers by following other gods, to serve them and bow down to them. They did not cease from their own doings, nor from their stubborn way." They were in a very dark place. After Joshua died, there was no real leadership. God would raise up a judge, he would save them, and then they would go back into it, just revert back to that same sinful life, playing the harlot with these other gods, bowing down to these other gods. This was a dark time for Israel, and it's about to get darker. So we're going to read the first 2 verses here, and we're going to break it down. "Now it came to pass, in the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. And a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to dwell in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, the name of his wife was Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahalion and Kilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah. And they went to the country of Moab and remained there." Ephrathites is just an ancient word for Bethlehem. Before Bethlehem was Bethlehem, it was known as Ephrathah. And there's actually another Bethlehem. So when they're talking about this one, they'll say Ephrathites to let you know it's within this realm of Judah. So again, just from the things that we know and we remember, there's a famine in the land. It's a dark time. Israel is very unstable. And Elimelech decides, I'm going to get up out of here. There's no food. I have to take care of my family. And he decides to pack up and head out. And this journey that they're going to take, again, after Joshua conquered everything, they divided up the lands, and it's all here. So their journey is actually going to be a 7 to 10 day journey. And they're here in Bethlehem. Moab is right here. The Ark of the Covenant, I put it between Bethel and Shiloh because it would move often to Bethel. I think when Deborah was a judge, it was in Shiloh. So it's right here. So as they were tracking for a better life, they would have kind of went by the Ark of the Covenant. They didn't say that they visited or worshiped, but they left a covenant community and went to enemy territory. And so again, about a 7 to 10 day journey. They had kids with them, so it may have been a little longer. But this was Elimelech's doing, and this is where we kind of find ourselves. This story begins with the famine to set in motion and unfolding of God's redemptive plan. Israel's found in a vicious cycle. Israel would be led astray with idolatry. God would allow their enemies to oppress them. Israelites would cry out for deliverance. God would raise up a judge to rescue them, and they would fall into idolatry again. This was just a cycle. Every time it would happen, a judge would raise up, he would die, they would go back, it would be worse. And there's a saying in there that's often in there, and it says, in those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. And you'll find that in Judges, kind of scattered throughout there. So they had no leader. They just thought, well, it feels right. And you know, this is what the census is saying. This is what the crowd's saying. So if the crowd and the consensus is saying all this, this must be right. There was no real moral standard. They've abandoned God and they're going after other gods. And so Elimelech, my God is king, in desperation decides to leave the presence of God, Bethel, and covenant community, the promised land, to dwell in enemy territory, which was a place of deep darkness and idolatry. And this could be seen as a lack of trust in God. I mean, his name is Elimelech. My God is king. And you would think if your God is king, you would be obedient and you would stick around the covenant community. But instead of doing this, again, he may have heard that, hey, there's food over here in Moab. And as I was looking at this, they're here, where Judah's around, well, it's just right here. Judah, Bethlehem right here, and Moab. So maybe he came close and he's seen some greenery, because this is actually elevated higher than this place. So maybe looking across the Dead Sea, hey, it looks green over there. The grass looks greener, and maybe Elimelech was like, you know what? I got to take care of my family. And so they make that track. And this leads us to the first lesson. Difficult times and tragedy can often lead to bad theology. That means your situation, no matter how rough it may seem, bleak it may seem, that can often lead you to move outside of the will of God, giving you a bad theology. Thinking, well, God loves me, he wants me to do good, and they're eating over there, but God didn't tell you to move over there, and then you step out of the will and you go over there, then of course you're gonna face the consequences. So again, the first lesson in this book that I've come to the conclusion to right here in just these first 5 verses, difficult times and tragedy can often lead to bad theology. You want to make sure that your theology is on point, especially when you're going through tragic times. You want to be able to get into the Word of God and get that direction, get that guidance. And now that we're under a new covenant, we have that Holy Spirit to help that unction to follow through with what he needs us to do. And so now we're going to look at some more dark times. And this is going to be verses 3 through 5. We'll read that and break it down. Then Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left and her 2 sons. Now they took wives of the women of Moab. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. And they dwelt there about 10 years. Then Mahlon and Chilion also died. So the women survived, her 2 sons and her husband. So things are getting darker. They leave covenant community. They're in enemy territory. And now the head of the family's gone. Naomi is probably distraught. I mean, you have to put yourself in her mindset. She is a Jewish woman living in Gentile territory, and she's probably thinking, God's not liking this. And we're still not eating. The famine's here, and we're still not eating. And now the husband's dead. So Naomi's feeling a certain way. Then it gets darker, because now her sons, sick and tired, marry Moab women that aren't a part of the covenant community, that aren't even supposed to enter into the assembly. So with Elimelech dying and Naomi now widow, we can see that the change in location did not make their circumstance better. A lot of times when we have a trial or we have something to deal with, a lot of times we want to just flee and get away from that situation. That doesn't mean your problem is going to stay there and not follow you. A lot of times that sin or that problem will follow you wherever you go. It doesn't matter where you move, what town you move in, what state you move in, what country you move in. That followed them. God has their eyes on them. Yeah, they're not a part of the covenant community, but a sheep had went astray and he still has his eye on that sheep. And now they're thinking, well, if I could just get out of this situation, it'll be better. That's false. A lot of times we got to stand firm and fight. If it's a situation where, there are some situations where you have to leave. This is not one of them. They're not being harassed. They're not, no harm is intentionally being done to them. They're going through a drought, yes, but the change didn't help. And now it got worse. Now he's dead. And now the children are marrying the Moabite women, Mahalion, Kilion, Moabite wives, Orpah and Ruth. They remained there for about 10 years. Again, although marrying Moabite women was acceptable, it was not favorable among the Israelites. And we read that again in Deuteronomy 23, 3-4. It wasn't like they were Canaanites and they were doing something really, really bad, but this was just up there with it. And then verse 5, the sons died childless, leaving behind 3 destitute widows with no heir. Dark times, just like we read in the beginning. Now, Naomi's probably feeling very hopeless. She has no heir. She has no real daughters, no children. How is she going to get through this? So to be childless widow was to be among the lowest, most disadvantaged classes in the ancient world. There was no one to support you, and you had to live on the generosity of strangers. Naomi had no family in Moab, and no one else to help her. It was a desperately tragic situation. It's starting to hopefully get in our heads that this woman is yes, in a very hopeless situation. There was no welfare at the time. You couldn't go to the government in Moab and apply for welfare and be like, hey, we need to eat. I need the government cheese and the peanut butter and the oils, and no, none of that. You had to get up, and now that your husband's not there, the one that would bring the food home or go hunting or doing these things, now she would have to get up and go get her water, go glean the fields, and hopefully get some meat somewhere. Maybe selling, trading. So she's in a hopeless situation in a strange land, away from covenant community, and things are getting very, very bleak, very, very dark. And one word that I want to look at is the word sha'er. It means survive, to remain, be left over, to be left behind, to be left alive, to survive. And I believe we're going to see that word there in verse 5 when it says that, so the women survived her 2 sons. And when I was looking at that, I was like, okay, there's something there. And we're going to pull that out here in a second. But to bring this to a close, this part of God's orchestration ends in great darkness. Tragedy strikes once again, and both sick and tired, quote unquote, follow their father in death. It seems that the sickness that brought about their death was from a famine, and they were close together in time. And the 3 widows are now left hopeless with no plan or direction. And before we get to the application, as I was going through the story, I wanted to implement a personal story, because as I was reading this, it just really touched me. The woman who raised me was my grandmother. Her name was Ruth. And she raised me since I was about a year old. We used to live in Grand Prairie, Texas. She had married again, and we moved from Grand Prairie, Texas to Seven Points, Texas. It was a strange land, never heard of it. We were young at the time and went, and she married Johnny. Johnny was a car salesman, and under Johnny, things were good. My mom was happy. He's a car salesman, so we had a car lot. We had a nice house. When we first moved to Seven Points, then we even bought a second house, a nice brick house, and things started happening with Johnny's health. And as that was happening, we kind of downgraded to a smaller house and then eventually to a 3-bedroom trailer. And it was then that in 1988 that he had passed away. And I was young. I was about 7 years old. But I was witnessing all these things. And this came up in my head as I was reading this story. And I remember having the funeral. Family was all there. And, we were eating, we were discussing. And I just remember them laughing sometimes and crying. And it was a whole thing. And then they would come to 7 Points and stay with us for a couple days. And, they would eat and cook and clean for my mom. And then finally it was time for everybody to go back home to work. And I remember that morning, it was a weekend, and we were in our small little kitchen, probably no bigger than what the media is, and there was a little window where we had a table, and my mom was making breakfast, and I remember sitting at the table with my Aunt Belinda. She's only a couple years older than me, and she made our food, she sat it down, and she's like, I guess it's just us now. And as I got older, I'm like, my gosh. That hurts. Sha'er. It's just us. It's just us that were left over. And I could just get in the mindset of a woman, of my mom, that, hey, you brought me out here. We had a plan. And you betrayed me. You abandoned me. But that wasn't the case. Life happens. But she felt a certain way. She was hopeless. Now things are happening. Now bills are piling up. And now all these tragic, dark times are starting to occur, and I'm too young to understand this. All I know is I see my mom crying a lot more. And I'm a 7-year-old kid, and I remember teachers asking me, are you okay? You okay? I'm like, oh, I'm good. Nothing's wrong with me. I didn't understand. But as I got older, I seen her struggle, and I'm thinking, man, he brought us to a place far from our family. We don't know anybody in this community. And my mom had to be left over to pick up the pieces. And that's where Naomi is. She's there and she's like, I had a partner and he's gone. I had kids and they're gone. I have these 2 daughter-in-laws. What am I going to do to feed these kids? And it could be that situation for you where your husband or your loved one passed away. Or it could be you have a loved one and that man decides to make some choices that are outside of the law. And he gets locked up, and now you're left here to again pick up the pieces. He can't be much help because he's locked up, and now you're thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to feed these kids? How am I going to pay this rent? How am I going to keep the lights on? This is a desperate situation. Or you're married or you're in a relationship and you have kids, and the dad decides, I'm going to bounce. I don't want to be a part of this no more, and I'm not helping. I'm not paying for shoes or diapers or your rent. I got something else going on. That's where she's at. And this is where we can find these people. If you're in that situation, a Naomi type situation where you're abandoned, where you're just sha'er, you are left over, you are behind. You're just sitting there trying to survive because now all these dark situations are surrounded you because of where you are and the decisions that were made by the head of the household that wasn't very good leadership, that used bad theology, has left you in a spot where you're hopeless. And then you start to feel a little bitter towards God. And we're not going to touch on that today, but next week. And that's where we find Ruth when or Naomi when we close this out. And Ruth, their husbands are gone too. They're young ladies, and now they're there with their mom. And they're looking at mom, and mom's sad because dad's gone, the husband's gone. And now mom's looking at her daughters, and it's a very dark, hopeless situation that they have not put themselves in, but find themselves in. But God's still working in the background. We just don't see it yet. He allowed this. He orchestrated this whole thing because remember, there's still got to be a messianic line, and it's got to come through somebody. And somebody's in this story right now. So he's going to begin to orchestrate this dark situation to bring about hope. And so now I want to look at some observation and application. And as I was looking at this, I was like, what words could Naomi and Ruth and Orpah, where could they have found hope? They didn't have a Bible, but Joshua, maybe some scrolls were around, or maybe they heard the story. So I went to Joshua because that was just a couple 400, 500 years before them. And And maybe they were able to look, maybe Naomi, being a Jewish woman, knew Joshua's story and held on to something. But I want to pull us something out of the Old Testament. So some observation here. Sometimes things get worse before they get better. I wish I could tell you, hey, it's going to be okay. Next week, you're going to be fine. Because next week, it may get worse. Things just happen. That's just life. If someone's telling you, yeah, it's going to be okay, you give yourself a couple days, you'll be right as rain, that's false. Mourning takes time. It could be weeks, months, it could be years. Sometimes things just get worse before they get better, but they will get better. Christ is that hope. Things will change. And so before we read the whole thing out of Joshua, the application there is stand firm in your faith. When things are just crumbling around you and you're around some strangers that you don't know and you need help, stand firm in your faith. Make sure that line of communication is open with God through Christ. Stay in prayer. Stay around people who are going to encourage you, uplift you, and not tear you down. The second thing to observe in the application is God's plan is in process even in the dark times to bring about your redemption and His glory. He's not going to just take you to a dark place and say, hey, you shouldn't have done that. I'm going to be over here. And when you're ready, you make your way back over here. No, He's still working. If you're in a covenant relationship with the Father and you have a relationship because of Jesus, He's going to continue to work through you and on you to bring about your sanctification and your redemption, and it's all going to give Him glory. So for that last one, remain faithful to the Lord. You may want to be like, you know what, this is not, God, you say you're always on time. When are you coming? Because it's getting dark and it's getting darker and darker and I'm just struggling, I'm suffering, and I'm going to do it on my own now. And you step again outside of the will of God because you want to fix it yourself. I'm mindful of that 40-year journey. We should have took 11 days, but they kept complaining. They kept messing up. And He's like, go ahead and take another lap. Go ahead and take another lap. So we do well to remain faithful to the Lord. So now I want to read these two scriptures together as one. And again, first one, stand firm in your faith. Second one, remain faithful to the Lord. Joshua 1, 7 and 8. And this is Joshua's about to take leadership. He's kind of in doubt. How am I going to do this? And the Lord speaks to him and He says, only be strong and very courageous, that you observe to do according to all the law which Moses, my servant, commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may prosper wherever you go. That's going to be the first one there. Stand firm in your faith. So standing firm. Don't look to the left. Don't look to the right. Don't be distracted. Stand firm. Keep your eyes fixed on Christ. The second one, verse 8. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate in it day and night, that you may observe to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous. Then you will have good success. Remain faithful to the Lord, because things are going to happen. They're going to shake your faith. Things are going to happen in your life that are going to turn your world upside down. And again, I wish I could tell you it's going to get better really soon. But sometimes these are just the beginning of sorrows, backing up once against another, because there's a domino effect, because this person dies and he was helping take care of the bills and the kids. I don't have that help anymore. Now waves of trouble are coming in. And it seems like you're drowning all these things. And Ruth is a good reminder of the reality of just that. Things aren't always good. There are times of mourning that last months and years. But Scripture tells us, weeping may endure for the night, but joy cometh in the morning. Sometimes those nights are really long. Sometimes the nights are really dark. But the morning is got to come. So we got to remain faithful, stand firm in your faith. With that, we're going to bring it to an end. We're going to look at some reflection questions. Don't have to answer these out loud. These are just something for you to reflect on. Have you ever been in a situation of tragedy and desperation causing bad theology in your own personal life? Maybe some things had happened and you thought, you know what, the book says this, but I think it's better if I do it this way, and caused even more tragic experiences? Second one, do you recognize God's providence and sovereignty in your daily life? As you're going about your daily life and, well, almost got hit by a car, but, something happened and another car swerved in its place and he missed me. This is God's providence. This is not just coincidence. This is God's providence in your life. And the third one, do you seek the Lord's counsel in the midst of your trials? When you're going through it, are you looking on YouTube for how to fix it? Are you going to Dr. Phil? Are you going to your friends who don't know Christ? Or are you looking? Are you coming to the church? Are you looking to your pastor? Are you getting in the Word and saying, what thus saith the Lord? So just that. Do you seek the Lord's counsel in the midst of your trials? And with that, the first lesson is yours. We will open it up to questions, comments, anything you guys might want to discuss. Amen.